Ladies and gentlemen, you might want to hold your champagne glasses tightly, because this is about to get juicy. The mic squealed slightly under the grip of Valencia Black, and every eye in the Langston Hotel ballroom turned toward the woman in the crimson dress with a smile sharp enough to slice marble. Cassian Reeve didn't move. He stood tall, tuxedo sharp, jaw carved from stone, one hand resting calmly on the small of his fiancée's back. But in his other hand, his fingers curled into a tight fist. His only betrayal. Polite applause faded. Then came it. That first snide chuckle. Then the next. Laughter, soft and scattered at first, began to ripple through the glittering room like an infection. Cassian's name was on everyone's lips. And beside him, Leora Vale, dressed in a flowing white gown that dared the night to match her beauty, remained unmoved. I just couldn't stay silent, Valencia crooned from the stage. I owe it to this poor girl here. She pointed straight at Leora, who still hadn't blinked. You see, I was married to Cassian. I know things. Deep things. The audience leaned in. Cassian's lips didn't part. His silence was heavier than a scream. Valencia smirked. He told me he was gay, she declared like a courtroom revelation. Said he just couldn't connect with women that way. Look at this. She gestured toward the couple. A fake engagement to cover up the truth. It's sad, really. Someone laughed louder this time. A man near the ice sculpture. Two women giggled behind their fans. Cameras clicked. Phone screens lit up. Whispers danced. Valencia folded her arms proudly, basking in the glow of her cruelty. Cassian didn't flinch, but Leora moved. Not her whole body, just her eyebrow, arched so gracefully, so wickedly, that it struck like lightning. Her hand slid up Cassian's back, stopping at the nape of his neck. She leaned in slightly, and then she smiled. That smile could have broken glass. With a voice coated in honey and steel, Leora said, "Funny, I do know what he likes in bed, intimately." The room gasped. I know because he taught me, with his mouth, his hands, and every muscle in that body. And sweetheart, she turned her full attention to Valencia, I have the moans, the bruises, and a shattered antique dresser to prove it. Silence. The hush was volcanic, seconds before eruption. Valencia opened her mouth, but Cassian moved first. He leaned in toward Leora, whispered something that made her lips curl with delight. Then, without breaking eye contact with the stunned crowd, he bent low, wrapped one arm around her thighs, lifted her bridal white dress slightly, and hoisted her over his shoulder. A murmur surged. A woman gasped, dropping her champagne flute. Someone hissed, "Oh my God." Cassian turned on his heel, calm and commanding, his fiancée perched on his shoulder like a crown. He walked forward through the crowd, heels clicking, eyes burning, cameras snapping. When he reached the center of the ballroom, he stopped. His voice, when it came, was low and unwavering. "This woman knows every scar on my body," he said. "Every nightmare I've lived through, every craving I used to deny myself. She didn't just accept me, she devoured me, heart, mind, and soul." He scanned the room slowly. Not a whisper in response. "And if any of you have a problem with how I love her," he paused, "you can kiss my very straight, very satisfied ass." He turned again, walked out, and the ballroom, frozen in disbelief, was left with only silence, shattered egos, and the scent of spilled champagne. But before the doors closed, Cassian looked over his shoulder one last time. That look alone said, "You underestimated the wrong man." Hey there, amazing family. Before we dive into today's story, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy our content, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss a single story from us. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to us. And now let's continue. Cassian didn't need to say another word. His walk out of the ballroom said it all. But Leora? She wasn't done. As they reached the grand double doors of the Langston Hotel ballroom, she tapped her fiancé's shoulder lightly. Still perched on his back, she leaned in and whispered, "Put me down." Cassian paused. Slowly, he set her down with care, his hand brushing the side of her waist as she smoothed her gown. Her spine straightened like steel under silk. Then, with deliberate poise, Leora turned to face the crowd that had just gorged on scandal. The room hadn't moved. Not a soul had breathed since they left. Eyes darted between Valencia and the couple like spectators at a chess match, only now it was clear who had checkmate in hand. Valencia stood frozen on stage, her microphone hanging loosely in one hand. Leora walked back toward her with the confidence of a queen, the fabric of her gown whispering across the marble floor. "I thought I was going to let it go," she said, loud enough for all to hear. But then I realized, no, I'm not giving anyone the satisfaction of pretending silence equals guilt. She stopped at the foot of the stage. "And since my future husband was too much of a gentleman to stoop to your level," her eyes met Valencia's. "Allow me." Valencia scoffed. "Sweetheart, I'm not scared of you." Leora tilted her head. "Oh, I know. You should be, though." The crowd shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone near the back let out a low damn. Leora didn't blink. "Let's address the tape first, shall we? The one you aired in public, thinking no one would notice the lighting was wrong. The chest scar that wasn't there. The moans that didn't match his voice." She stepped up onto the stage, heels clicking like punctuation marks. "I've heard those real sounds," she said softly. "He doesn't moan. He growls, low, like thunder waiting for permission to strike." Valencia's jaw clenched. "And the man in that video? Please. My fiancé has a curve to him, left, slight, but just enough to matter. And a mole on his lower back that I kiss every morning." A woman near the front gasped. A man stifled a laugh. "See," Leora continued, "when you truly know someone's body, you don't need to guess. You don't have to perform. You remember, because you loved it." Valencia tried to interrupt. "You think this proves anything? That you—" "I know what he tastes like when he's 3 days into stress and hasn't slept," Leora interrupted coolly. "I know how his voice changes when I ride him slow, then faster. I know the exact second he breaks, and I've made him break 100 times." The crowd wasn't breathing. She turned to them now. "You laughed," she said, "because a woman stood on this stage and fed you a scandal. But not one of you stopped to ask if any of it made sense, if it even looked like him." She let the silence settle. "Love doesn't need to perform," she added. "But liars? They always overact." Leora stepped down from the stage and walked toward Cassian. He hadn't moved. He stood still, his eyes locked on her like she was the only real thing in a room full of noise. She reached him, cupped his face gently, and kissed him. Not just any kiss. A kiss that silenced a ballroom more completely than shame ever could. A kiss with hands sliding into his hair, with her body pressed into his like it belonged there. When she pulled back, she whispered, "They know now." Cassian brushed his thumb over her cheekbone, the corner of his mouth lifting. "They're not the ones I care about." "Good," she replied, "because I only care about you." They turned together and exited the ballroom, this time hand in hand, no longer escaping, now owning every step. They were steps away from the exit when Cassian paused. He felt Leora's fingers twitch gently against his, sensing the storm still pulsing in his chest. The ballroom silence remained, uneasy, frozen, wounded, yet the sting in the air wasn't his. Not anymore. Cassian turned, not to validate them, not to defend himself, but because silence had one final gift to deliver. His eyes scanned the crowd. Dozens of faces, some ashamed, some curious, some disappointed that the drama was ending without bloodshed. He wasn't here for them. He found the one face that mattered, Valencia's. Still standing on the stage, she looked like a statue suddenly unsure of its purpose. Her smirk had vanished. The mic dangled from her hand like a dead limb. Cassian met her gaze without blinking. It wasn't rage that filled his stare. It was peace. The kind of peace that can only grow in someone who has bled through enough lies to finally know who he is and who he'll never be again. "You know," he said calmly, to no one in particular, "I used to dream of saving face in rooms like this, of proving myself, of being the man people believed in again." He exhaled, not bitter, just clean. "But I don't need that anymore. Because when the person beside you knows the whole truth and still chooses to walk with you, that's all the proof that matters." He turned his head slightly toward Leora. "This woman," he said, "didn't fall for my status. She fell for the man behind the armor, and she gave me something I never got from anyone in this room." The air held still. Freedom. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted in their chair. No one laughed now. Cassian's voice remained steady. "So, I hope you enjoyed the entertainment," he added. "But understand this." He took one step forward, and his voice dropped to a calm, even timbre. "You may have known the man I used to be, but the man standing here now, he's already won." Valencia looked away. Leora squeezed his hand once. That was enough. With nothing left to prove, They turned and walked through the doors, disappearing into the velvet night with all eyes still watching. Outside, the black car waited. The driver stood stiffly by the door, unsure if opening it would interrupt something sacred. Cassian opened the door himself, letting Leora slide in first, then followed. Inside the car, he didn't speak right away. He simply took her hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed her knuckles gently. Leora looked at him sideways. "You okay?" He nodded. "I wasn't sure how it would feel." "And now?" He glanced out the tinted window. The hotel behind them was nothing but a reflection now, just lights and echoes in the glass. "Now it feels like a chapter closed." Leora leaned into him, her voice low. "Then let's write the next one ourselves." Cassian turned toward her, and the tension that had ruled his spine all evening melted at her words. "Starting when?" he asked. She smiled. "I already started it the night I met you. You're just catching up." He laughed softly, his forehead resting against hers. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being louder than the lies." Hello, wonderful family. If you're still here, if you are still watching, please don't forget to hit that like button, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on what happens next. Now let's continue. 3 years before that infamous gala, the view from the penthouse was stunning. Too perfect. Cassian stood barefoot in the kitchen, surrounded by elegance that no longer felt earned. Marble counters, brushed gold faucets, a wine rack full of unopened bottles. The appliances gleamed, untouched. Everything was pristine, curated, soulless, just like his marriage. Valencia entered the room like she always did, effortlessly composed, draped in the ivory silk robe he had custom designed for their 2nd anniversary. Her bare feet didn't make a sound as they crossed the polished floors. Only her voice did. "I'm sorry you saw that," she said coolly, like she was apologizing for an out-of-place napkin. Cassian didn't answer. He placed the small black USB drive onto the counter between them. The plastic casing looked insignificant, but inside, enough video proof to annihilate every illusion he'd ever built around her. Her arms folded. "Cass, let's not do this now." "You filmed it," he said flatly. "In our bed." Silence. Cassian's gaze didn't waver. "With 5 men, different days, different angles, same sheets. While I was in Hong Kong negotiating our expansion deal." Valencia's expression remained unreadable, but her fingers tugged at the sash of her robe unconsciously. He watched her, not to intimidate her. He was past that. "I didn't think you'd ever find out," she admitted finally. "You were so busy. And so cold." "Cold?" Cassian blinked. "I was building a life. For us." "No," she said, stepping forward. "You were building a corporation, and I was just the accessory." Cassian shook his head once. "You always knew I wasn't built for games, Valencia. That's why I played them," she said with a shrug. "Someone had to feel alive." The words stung, not because they were loud, but because of how casual they were. No guilt, no fear, just indifference. He stepped closer. "You once told me I hurt you. On our wedding night." Valencia's gaze flicked away. "You faked blood. On the sheets. Told me I broke you. I was trying to make you feel like a man," she snapped. "It was performance, Cass. We both needed the fantasy." "No," he corrected her quietly. "I needed a partner. You needed an audience." Her eyes narrowed. "You wanted the untouched bride, so I gave you the act. And what about the rumors?" he asked. "That I wasn't into women?" She smirked. "Insurance. Just in case you ever decided to walk away." Cassian swallowed hard. "That lie," he said slowly, "followed me into boardrooms, into interviews. It cost me investors. You knew what it would do. I knew it would keep you close." He stepped back as if the air between them had grown toxic. "Everything you ever gave me," he whispered, "was an illusion." Valencia didn't argue. She simply turned, walked to the breakfast nook, and poured herself a glass of juice from a crystal carafe. Cassian's chest rose with quiet fury. He looked around the space, this museum of a home, and saw every decision he'd made for her, the imported stone, the artisan light fixtures, the curated artwork, all for someone who never once intended to stay. "I should have known," he murmured. Valencia glanced over her shoulder. "Known what?" "That a woman who lives for cameras would never survive behind closed doors." He walked into the bedroom without another word. When he returned, her designer suitcase rolled behind him. He set it near the front door, opened it, and then unlocked the door itself. Valencia stared at him. Seriously? He nodded once. Go. You're not even going to yell? She mocked. Throw something? Threaten to ruin me? He met her eyes. No, you've already done enough of that yourself. She stepped forward, standing inches from him. You'll never get someone like me again. Cassian didn't blink. I pray I don't. Cassian didn't cry when the door clicked shut behind Valencia. Not because he wasn't broken, but because the kind of heartbreak she left behind didn't make room for tears. It hardened him, refined him, like fire sculpting steel. He walked back into the living room. The USB still sat on the kitchen counter like a silent detonator. He picked it up, slipped it into the drive of his laptop, and pressed play. Again, just one of the videos. Not because he needed confirmation, but because he had to burn the last trace of hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd misunderstood. The screen flickered. The video loaded. There she was, his wife, straddling a stranger in the bed they once shared. Her back arched, her voice loud, her expression pure performance. His jaw tensed as the man's voice groaned her name, casual, drunk, forgettable. The same bed where she once pretended pain, pretended purity, faked fragility. Cassian paused the video. He couldn't watch anymore. He closed the laptop slowly, as if touching something sacred that had died. For minutes he stood there, hands braced against the marble island, breathing through the weight of revelation. Everything had been carefully constructed. The fake blood, the staggered breath, the whispered "you hurt me." She had choreographed it like a movie. And it worked. He had spent months after their wedding researching how to be gentle, hours reading medical articles, relationship forums, trauma recovery resources. Every touch, every kiss, measured. Every night, filled with guilt that he might be damaging someone he loved. He had cried in silence, felt ashamed of his strength, his desire, his needs. And all along, she had been laughing behind his back. He grabbed a nearby whiskey decanter, poured himself 2 fingers worth, and downed it in one breath. The burn didn't help. He reached for his phone and opened the hidden folder, the one where he kept photos not meant for social media or public relations. Just real moments. One image stood out. Their honeymoon. Her laughing on the beach in Santorini. Him smiling tightly beside her. At the time he thought he looked tired because of the jet lag. Now he knew it was the beginning of emotional exhaustion. He deleted it. Photo by photo, he removed her from his life. The curated gallery of their life together collapsed one tap at a time. It was strangely therapeutic. Then he opened his notes app. He titled the page, "Things I Know Now," and he began to type. She was never in love with me. She studied my weaknesses. She used them to mold me. She used intimacy as leverage. She weaponized my silence. He stared at that last line for a long time, then added one more. That ends now. Cassian closed the app. He didn't need therapy. He needed rebirth. That night, he didn't sleep in the master bedroom. He laid a sheet on the floor of the guest room. No pillows, no noise, no memories. The silence wasn't haunting anymore. It was medicinal. By morning, he'd made 3 calls. 1. To his lawyer, filing divorce papers with an attached hard drive. 2. To his executive assistant, instructing her to clear his schedule for the next 10 days. 3. To his driver, asking for a one-way trip to the Arts District. He didn't know why yet, only that he couldn't stay in marble and mirrors another second longer. Have you ever been manipulated into guilt for simply being yourself? Comment, "They won't control my story," and hit the like button if you've ever reclaimed your peace after being deceived. Valencia returned the next morning. She had a key. He hadn't changed the locks yet. She stepped into the penthouse with the entitlement of someone who believed beauty excused betrayal. Her heels clicked across the floor like punctuation marks she no longer had the right to use. Cassian was seated on the couch, calm, awake, changed. "Forgot something?" he asked, not looking up. Valencia blinked. "I figured you'd want to talk like adults." He raised his head slowly. "Adults?" His tone was even. "Adults don't drug trust and leave it bleeding." She sighed dramatically. "Come on, Cass. We both played roles." "No," he said. "You played me. There's a difference." She walked toward the kitchen, eyes scanning the empty counter. "Where's the ring?" "Pawned," he replied. Use the money to sponsor an abuse recovery charity. Her lips twitched. Always so noble. Cassian stood. In his hand, he held a manila envelope. Inside, he said, "You'll find the divorce papers, a list of items you're allowed to take, and a signed agreement relinquishing all future rights to my assets, estate, and name." Valencia didn't move. "I already have everything I need," she said. "Your reputation's toast." He smiled faintly. "That would only matter," he replied, "if I still lived for people's approval." She stepped closer, narrowing her eyes. "You really think people won't whisper? That they won't wonder if I was right?" Cassian stepped forward too, his voice now lower, firmer. "I hope they do." Valencia froze. "I hope they whisper," he continued, "because every time they do, it gives me one more chance to show the world what truth looks like when it walks without shame." She stared at him for a beat too long, then laughed, dry, fake, brittle. "You'll regret losing me." "No," he said. "I regret believing you were someone worth keeping." He held out her suitcase. "This time, you don't get to walk out and come back. There's no round two, no reconciliation arc. This isn't a romance. This is closure." Valencia didn't take the bag. She just stared at him like she couldn't recognize him anymore. Because she couldn't. Cassian Reeve, the man who once tiptoed around her moods, who softened his voice and silenced his own needs, was gone. This version was sharper, colder, clearer, and absolutely done. She grabbed the handle without another word. At the door, she paused, turned her head halfway, and muttered, "You'll miss me." Cassian didn't even blink. "You were a lesson," he said, "not a loss." The door shut behind her. This time, it didn't echo. It sang. He didn't stay long after that. Within 48 hours, Cassian had a team strip the penthouse of everything she had touched, chosen, or tainted. The bed was replaced. The sofa sold. The mirrors removed. He kept only the piano, because that was his, and music never lied to him. That evening, as the city lights glittered through the windows, Cassian opened his notes app again. Things I know now. Addendum. Silence isn't weakness. Boundaries are love spelled correctly. I'd rather be alone than perform for affection. Next time, I'll choose someone who sees me, not who sells me. He saved the file, closed the app, then picked up his keys. Because some pain can only be washed off by walking straight into something new. The rain didn't ask permission. It came down in sheets, slicking the streets of the Arts District in an unpredictable rhythm. Cassian stepped out of the black town car without an umbrella, not caring that his $1,000 shoes were soaked by the time he crossed the curb. The driver offered to wait. Cassian waved him off. He didn't know why he was here. He just knew he couldn't go back to marble counters and cold silence. His eyes landed on a hand-painted sign outside a brick building tucked between a cafe and a bookstore. Life drawing, drop-ins welcome, cash preferred, soul required. He stared at it for a long second, then stepped inside. The door creaked as he entered. The room smelled like turpentine, burnt coffee, and possibility. Wooden easels stood like sentinels. Charcoal dust floated in the air like secrets waiting to be confessed. A woman glanced up from her stool near the entrance. "You here to sketch or brood?" she asked. Cassian blinked. The woman grinned. "It's okay. We get a lot of both." She pointed toward the back. Charcoal's in the cabinet. Papers on the rack. Models on break, so you've got 2 minutes. Cassian nodded once and walked toward the tools like he knew what he was doing. He didn't. He fumbled with the paper, his hands unsure. The last time he'd drawn anything, he was 8. And it was a spaceship. Or a horse. No one could really tell. But something about the quiet hum in the studio, the low jazz playing from a cracked speaker, made him stay. Then she walked in. Cassian didn't see her at first, just the hush that followed. And then, Leora Vale. She stepped onto the velvet-draped platform like a woman who didn't ask for attention but always received it. Her robe slipped from her shoulders in one fluid motion, pooling at her feet. Nude, unapologetic, poised. Her skin glowed under the golden overhead bulbs, deep mahogany with highlights that caught the light like polished copper. Her afro framed her face like a halo that had decided grace alone wasn't enough. It needed fire, too. She reclined on her side, one leg bent, the other stretched out. One hand rested on her hip, the other beneath her cheek. Stillness. Strength. serenity. Cassian couldn't breathe. "You all right, Suit?" The same woman from the door called out. "You're holding that charcoal like it's a grenade." He looked down. Sure enough, his fingers were white-knuckled around the stick. He sat, awkwardly, then began to draw. Badly. His strokes were stiff, lines too sharp, angles too forced. But he didn't stop. Something about her stilled the chaos in his chest. Not because she was naked, but because she was whole, unashamed, alive. He captured none of it, and yet he kept going. Time slipped, until the brake buzzer sounded. Leora sat up, stretching like a cat waking from a nap. She hopped off the platform, pulling her robe back on with zero urgency. And then she walked straight toward him. Cassian froze. She stopped at his easel, tilted her head, and studied the sketch. He waited. "Rigid," she said. "Too calculated. But, he managed. "There's something raw underneath," she said softly, then looked up. "First time drawing? First time seeing someone worth drawing." She smiled, but it didn't flirt. It tested. "You're not the first man to say something like that to me," she replied. "I'm not trying to impress you," he said. "Good," she said, "because your ears are pink." He instinctively reached up. They were. She chuckled. "You're not an artist." "No." "You're not here for a hobby." "No." She leaned in slightly. "So, what are you here for?" He paused. "Peace." Leora nodded. "Fair answer." She straightened, brushing a curl away from her cheek. "Soup?" "What?" "I make a mean gumbo," she said. "You look like someone who eats anxiety for breakfast and drinks guilt at night. I don't trust men like that to walk home in the rain alone." Cassian blinked. "I didn't come here to—" "I'm not offering sex, sweetheart. I'm offering soup." He smiled. For the first time in a long time. Then he stood. "Lead the way." Leora's apartment was nothing like Cassian expected. Small, lived in, and unapologetically warm. Plants hung in every corner, vines curling around wooden beams. Candles sat in mismatched jars, flickering gently. The air smelled of smoked paprika, sage, and whatever she'd left simmering on the stove. A black cat with one white paw hissed at him from the bookshelf. "Don't take it personal," Leora said, tossing her keys into a woven bowl by the door. "He hates energy that's too buttoned up." "I'm not buttoned up," Cassian replied, slipping off his coat. "You flinched when you stepped on that rug," she smirked. "You're definitely buttoned up." He looked down. The rug was pink, fluffy, and shaped like a cloud. "Fair enough." Leora padded barefoot into the kitchen. "You like spice?" "I don't mind it." "Good, because this gumbo doesn't care either way." Cassian stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure whether to sit, speak, or just absorb. She returned with 2 steaming bowls, handed him one, and flopped onto the couch like it was her throne. He sat carefully beside her. First bite, fire. But it was addictive. Deep, rich, flavorful. "You don't talk much, do you?" she asked between spoons. "I used to," he said. "Before I realized how often my words were edited and weaponized." Leora nodded. "So now you stay quiet to stay safe." He glanced at her. "You always this direct?" "Only when I like someone." That stopped him. She stirred her spoon slowly. "You walked into an art studio in a tailored suit during a thunderstorm. That's not random. That's unraveling." He didn't respond immediately, but he didn't look away either. "Everything I built felt real," he finally said, until it collapsed and revealed what was underneath. And what was that? Noise, perception, manipulation. Leora took another bite, chewed thoughtfully, then said, "Sounds like you need to create something. I'm not an artist, yet you walked into a place where people bleed onto paper." Cassian let out a dry laugh. "Bleed is a strong word." "No," she said, setting her bowl down. "What's strong is choosing to be seen after being used." The words hit harder than he expected. She leaned back, stretching her arms across the couch's top edge. "You still have the sketch?" He nodded. "Let me see it again." Cassian hesitated, then pulled the folded paper from his coat pocket. She took it, examined it in the soft light. "You tried to draw me," she said, "but you ended up drawing yourself." He raised an eyebrow. "That bad? That honest?" She pointed to the lines. "Too sharp, too symmetrical. You're a man who spent years making sure nothing falls apart. But now that it has, your hands don't know how to lie anymore. She handed the paper back. You don't need to be good, she said. You just need to be honest. Cassian studied her. No one's ever said that to me before. Leora grinned. That's because most people only want the parts of you that shine. I like the parts that are still learning how to breathe. A pause stretched between them, long but not uncomfortable. Then her hand found his knee. No pressure, just a touch, a grounding. And in that stillness, he felt something stir. Not lust, not urgency, but ease. I should go, he said eventually. You could, she said softly, or you could stay. I'm not ready for anything. Complicated. I didn't ask for complicated, she said. Just company. He nodded slowly, removed his shoes, and stayed. The couch wasn't spacious, but it felt like sanctuary. Leora curled into the corner, legs tucked beneath her, holding her second bowl of gumbo like it was sacred. Cassian sat at the opposite end, one arm resting behind his head, the other wrapped around his own bowl, warmth slowly spreading through his chest, and not just from the cayenne. The window rattled softly from the storm still rumbling outside. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and steady. Neither of them filled the silence with forced talk. That, more than anything, gave him peace. Leora finally broke the quiet, not with words, but a question wrapped in a sideways glance. Do you dream, Cassian? He turned slightly. You mean, in general? I mean at all. Or has the world squeezed it out of you? He stared at her, then answered, I used to. She waited. I dreamed of building something that lasted, he said. A legacy, a partnership. Something strong enough to hold weight. And what happened? It held hers, he said, voice flat. But not mine. She nodded, not asking for more. You, he asked. I used to want to be someone's muse, she admitted. He looked at her, surprised. She grinned. I know. It sounds cliché. No, he said. It sounds honest. I thought if someone saw me that way, she continued, they'd never leave. But the first man who called me his muse didn't draw me. He tried to erase me. Cassian's brows furrowed. How? Little things, she said. Told me to wear my hair straight. Said my laugh was too loud. Said I intimidated people with how comfortable I was in my own skin. Cassian's jaw tightened. Turns out, she said, he didn't want a muse. He wanted a mirror. And you're not that, he said. No, she agreed. I'm the frame. He smiled. And this time, it wasn't practiced. Later, the empty bowls rested on the coffee table. Leora kicked off her blanket and stretched out, her bare feet brushing against his thigh. Cassian didn't flinch. Her cat finally wandered over and curled into his lap, a reluctant blessing. Well, Leora murmured, if he approves, you must not be entirely broken. Cassian chuckled, gently stroking the cat's head. I don't know what this is, he said, almost to himself. Does it have to be anything right now? He shook his head. I'm not used to. No pressure. You've been surviving, she said. Tonight, you're just existing. Her hand reached across the couch and rested on his. He didn't pull away. Stay, she whispered. Just tonight, not for me, for you. Cassian hesitated, then nodded once. She handed him a pillow, pulled another blanket from the basket by the chair, and settled onto her side of the couch again. He laid back, letting the quiet settle over them like a balm. Minutes passed. Then her voice, soft as dusk. Cassian? Yeah. You don't have to perform here. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in years, he slept, deeply, soundly, without dreams. Because reality, for once, was finally enough. Cassian showed up at the studio the next day. No driver, no umbrella, no armor. He wore jeans and a plain black tee, an uncharacteristically simple look for a man whose closet used to smell like leather, cashmere, and precision. Leora was already there, barefoot, her robe tied loosely around her waist as she stretched on the platform. Her afro was bigger today, like it had taken in the storm and grown on principle. She spotted him, grinned, and said, Back for another drawing lesson or just couldn't stop thinking about my soup? Cassian walked in slowly. Bit of both. He reached into the paper bag he carried and pulled out a small bundle of white lilies. She raised an eyebrow. I Googled it, he admitted. Apparently, these mean renewal. Leora stepped down from the platform, took the bouquet, and smelled it. Points for symbolism, she said. But you didn't need to bring anything. I wanted to. She gave him a look, half amused, half appreciative. Careful, Cass. You're starting to act human. That morning, she didn't model for the class. She handed off the session to a substitute, grabbed her sketchbook and dragged him to a nearby cafe with mismatched chairs and cinnamon in the air. They sat outside under a striped awning. Cassian sipped espresso like he didn't hate it. Leora devoured a flaky croissant like joy was something you could taste. She showed him her portfolio, pages of color, charcoal, and wildness. Nothing about it was sterile. It was loud and alive. Draw something, she said, pushing a blank page toward him. He blinked. You're already in public, she said. Might as well risk being bad at something. He hesitated, then picked up the pencil. She leaned forward, eyes on his face instead of the page. You're holding your breath, she said. He exhaled slowly and kept sketching. When he was done, she took the paper without comment. It was rough, stiff, but better than last time. She traced the lines gently. You're not drawing me anymore. Cassian looked confused. You're drawing how you see me, she said. That's more intimate. He didn't know what to say, so she saved him. You're improving, Cass. I think it's because I'm finally breathing again. Leora looked at him with something softer than approval. I'm glad, she said. Back at her apartment that evening, he cooked for her. Or tried to. He ruined the rice, burned the chicken slightly, and left the kitchen looking like a sitcom disaster. Leora laughed so hard she had to sit on the floor. He stood there holding a wooden spoon like a man betrayed by garlic. I built a global company, he muttered, but rice beat me. She was still laughing. This is why I don't trust men in fitted shirts. They crumble under cumin. Cassian smirked. Is that your expert opinion? Absolutely. He dropped the spoon, walked over, and sat on the floor next to her. They leaned against the cabinets, sharing what was salvageable of the meal from one bowl. No pretense, no posture, just two people slowly forgetting their pasts. Later she put on music, slow jazz, a saxophone that made the air heavy. She danced around the room barefoot, holding an invisible partner, her curls bouncing with every sway. Cassian watched from the couch, his chin resting on his hand. You're staring, she said. I've never seen someone dance like no one's watching. While being watched, she laughed. That's because you've only known people who perform. Leora reached out a hand. Dance with me. I don't dance. Neither do I, she said. But I move. He stood slowly, took her hand, and let her guide him. They didn't follow rhythm. They followed breath. And somewhere between her chest against his and her laughter in his ear, Cassian realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. He was beginning to feel again. Rain tapped against the windows again. Not a storm this time. Just a steady rhythm, like the sky was humming quietly in approval. Cassian stood in Leora's bathroom, brushing his teeth with the spare toothbrush she'd tossed him an hour ago. He wore one of her oversized hoodies, his own clothes in the washer after another ruined attempt at cooking. He looked at himself in the mirror. Barefaced, barefoot, oddly peaceful. She appeared behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, chin resting on his shoulder. You look different, she whispered. How? Less CEO. More man. Cassian turned, meeting her eyes. The lights were dim. Her curls spilled across her shoulders, her robe barely tied. She didn't need perfume. She smelled like herself, clove oil, sage, and something only he would ever know. He lifted his hand to her face, tracing the curve of her cheek. You're dangerous, he murmured. Leora smiled lazily. Only if you run. I'm not running. Good. She took his hand and walked him backward into the bedroom. The sheets were still warm from when they folded laundry there earlier. The lamps were off. Just candlelight flickered, casting shadows, not stories. Leora pushed the robe from her shoulders, letting it fall. She stood in front of him, naked, waiting, not offering, just present. Cassian didn't rush. He stepped closer, unzipping the borrowed hoodie slowly, letting her watch as he removed each layer. His scars were visible now. The one on his shoulder from a bike accident. The faint line on his ribs from a reckless ski trip in college. She touched each one like a question answered. He leaned down, kissed the spot just below her collarbone. She sighed, not performative, just breath leaving the body in surrender. They didn't tumble into bed. They slid, limbs intertwined, skin to skin, every movement deliberate. Cassian hovered above her, breath thick. "Tell me if you want me to stop." Leora shook her head once. "Tell me if you ever stop seeing me." "I won't," he promised. Then he kissed her, not with hunger, but reverence. She opened for him slowly. No urgency, no games, just heat and honesty. Her thighs wrapped around him, her nails curled into his shoulders. And when he entered her, she didn't gasp. She pulled him closer and whispered, "Welcome home." They moved like waves meeting shore, soft at first, then stronger, uncoiling every guarded part of him, every soft place she'd hidden. He gripped her hips, slid deeper, felt her arch. She looked up at him, lips parted, chest rising. "Say it," she breathed. He didn't ask what. "I see you," he said. "All of you." Her legs tightened. Her voice broke. "Yes." Cassian drove deeper, slower. His hands never left her. She clawed his back. "Don't stop." "I couldn't," he growled. Sweat dripped down his spine. Their rhythm changed, faster now, bodies speaking in a language no one else would ever understand. She kissed his neck. He bit her shoulder. And when her body shuddered, she said his name like it was a prayer. He followed, collapsing onto her chest, their heartbeats sinking. No words, no rush, just breath. Minutes passed. Leora stroked his hair. Cassian spoke into her skin. "You weren't supposed to be this." She smiled. "What was I supposed to be? A distraction, a one-night reason not to feel broken. And now? You're the reason I don't feel broken anymore." She turned his face toward hers. "Good," she whispered. "Because I didn't want to fix you. I just wanted to meet you, real." They kissed again. This time, it didn't burn. It healed. Cassian woke up and didn't know where he was. Not because he was disoriented, but because everything felt too quiet, too calm. His chest wasn't tight. His jaw wasn't clenched. The usual war behind his eyelids was gone. No dreams, no deadlines, just the soft hum of rain outside the window and the steady rhythm of someone else breathing beside him. Then he remembered, Leora, and he smiled. He turned his head slightly. She was curled into him, one hand resting on his stomach, her curls spilling over the pillow like silk in rebellion. Her lips were parted slightly, breath even, brow relaxed. She wasn't posing. She was just there. No makeup, no barriers, no need to perform for the man lying next to her. Cassian stared at the ceiling. He hadn't slept like this in years. Not since long before Valencia. Maybe not ever. He reached for his phone. Habit. 5:43 a.m. Normally he'd be reviewing market numbers, answering emails, already 3 tasks deep into a day designed for conquest. But not this morning. He placed the phone back on the nightstand. Leora stirred slightly, then stilled again. Her fingers brushed against his skin. Even in sleep, she reached for him. Cassian turned his head toward her. He didn't want to move. Didn't want to break the spell that this ordinary quiet moment had cast. For once, nothing was required of him. No solutions to offer. No image to protect. No role to play. Just breath. Just skin. Just presence. She woke up 15 minutes later. Eyes fluttered open, then settled on him. "You stayed," she murmured, voice thick with sleep. "I did." Leora yawned into his shoulder. "Wasn't sure if you were the bolt-after type." "I'm not," he said. "But even if I were, I wouldn't run from you." She blinked slowly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," he said. "I'm not used to waking up. Rested. That's what peace does. It doesn't shout. It just settles." She kissed his chest and sighed. "I'm starving," she added. Cassian chuckled. "You just fed me hours ago. That was emotional food. I'm talking eggs and pancakes. I can try." "No," she said firmly. "You are banned from stoves until further notice." "Fair." She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her as she stretched. "You want coffee?" "I want you." She glanced back at him. He wasn't trying to be seductive. He was just telling the truth. Leora leaned down, kissed his forehead and whispered, "Then be ready to want me every morning, because I'm not going anywhere." Cassian closed his eyes briefly and breathed in the scent of her skin. Cinnamon. citrus, clarity. Later, as she danced around the kitchen in nothing but his shirt, flipping pancakes with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved, Cassian sat at the table and just watched. No laptop, no calls, no distractions. She turned the music up, something soft and slow, and sang along off-key, grinning over her shoulder. He didn't just smile. He felt the smile. From somewhere deep. Maybe the boy who used to believe in mornings had returned. Maybe the man who stopped believing in forever had finally found a reason to start again. 6 months passed like smoke through open fingers. Cassian didn't count the days. He didn't need to. Time no longer came in reports or revenue. It came in sensations. The way Leora's feet curled around his calves at night. The way her voice, mid-laugh, could stop him mid-sentence. The way she never asked him to be more, only asked that he be. They lived between two spaces, her art-drenched apartment and his newly stripped-down penthouse. Together, they built a rhythm that didn't belong to either of their old lives. She painted in his shirt. He took morning meetings barefoot. They kissed in grocery store aisles and danced while folding laundry. Cassian learned that joy wasn't loud, it was persistent. Like the way Leora touched him when no one else was watching. The way she whispered things that felt too sacred for daylight. He gave her everything. Not in speeches, but in action. The code to his building. A drawer of her own. His quiet. His routines. His sleep. And one night, she gave him something back. It was late. They were tangled in bed, the city lights seeping through the blinds like permission. Leora lay on her stomach, sketching him lazily from memory. Cassian watched her, shirtless, propped up on one elbow, the sheet pooling low on his hips. "You know what's wild?" she said, eyes on the page. "What? I've been drawn by dozens of people, but the one sketch you did, where my proportions are all off, it's my favorite." He laughed. "You're just saying that." "No," she said, still focused, "because it's the only one where I can see me through your eyes." Cassian didn't speak for a moment. Then, "I'm terrified of how much I love you." She looked up. "I'm not," she said. Her pencil stopped moving. She shifted, crawling into his lap, notebook discarded. "I've had people want me," she said. "But you revere me." Her hands cupped his face. "And when you touch me, it feels like worship." He exhaled slowly. "Because it is." Their mouths met, not rushed, not restrained, a kiss that melted into something deeper. When she straddled him, the air changed. Her fingers slid down his chest. His hands gripped her thighs, guiding her slowly down onto him. She didn't gasp. She closed her eyes like prayer. Cassian rested his forehead against hers, every breath he took syncing with hers. They moved in silence. No rush, no demands, just reverence. She arched, rolled her hips and whispered, "I want to be yours, in every way." Cassian gritted his teeth, the control he'd honed for years unraveling beneath her. He flipped her gently onto her back, leaned in, and pushed deeper. "You already are," he growled. Her legs wrapped around him. Her nails clawed at his back. "I'm going to marry you, Leora," he said against her mouth. "I'm going to love you until you beg me not to." "Never," she gasped. He pulled back, stared into her eyes. "Beg? Beg me to stop." He didn't. Her body broke open beneath him, a cry slipping through her lips like surrender. He followed, every muscle tense, every ounce of control sacrificed at her altar. When they stilled, she didn't speak, she just touched his cheek. And for the first time, Cassian understood what it meant to be chosen. "Hello, family. What happens next will put you at the edge of your sit for real. If you are still watching, don't stop until the end of this amazing story. Make sure you like the video by tapping on the like button. Also hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss out on what happened next." The room still smelled like sex and rain. Cassian lay beside her, one arm beneath Leora's shoulders, the other tracing lazy circles along her waist. Her skin was warm, damp with the afterglow of everything they'd just shared. His breath was slow, centered, but his heart? Still wild. She turned onto her side and draped one leg across his body, her thigh resting high on his hip. He could feel her heartbeat against his ribs. "Tell me again," she whispered, her lips brushing his jaw. "Say it." He didn't hesitate. "I'm going to marry you." Leora smiled, her eyes half-lidded. "Not later." "Say it like you mean now." Cassian rolled her onto her back with one swift movement, his body rising over hers. Her breath hitched, not from surprise, but from anticipation. She gripped his forearm as he hovered, their faces inches apart. "I mean it," he said. "If I had a ring right now, I'd put it on your finger and take you again with it shining between us." Her hips arched toward him. "No one's ever wanted me like this," she breathed. "No one's ever deserved you like I do," he growled. He lowered himself slowly, dragging his mouth down her neck, his tongue tracing the line of her collarbone. She moaned, deep and involuntary. "I want every inch of you claimed," she whispered. "Inside, outside, every place no one's touched right." Cassian kissed her shoulder, then her sternum, then down. "You don't just want to be mine," he murmured. "You are mine." He slipped down further, spreading her thighs with both hands. She didn't flinch. She opened, fully, for him. Cassian kissed the inside of her thigh, then bit gently, enough to mark her, enough to remind her. Her fingers curled into the sheets. Then his mouth met her. She gasped, clenched, then let go. His tongue was slow at first, deliberate. He tasted her like he'd waited his entire life for this moment, and maybe he had. She bucked beneath him, hips grinding against his mouth, her voice raw with pleasure. "Don't stop. Please, don't stop." He didn't. His hands held her steady as he licked, sucked, and devoured, her moans growing louder with every second. When her body shook violently, when she came with a cry that cracked through the air like thunder, he didn't let up. He kept going until she tried to pull away. He grabbed her thighs and growled, "No, not yet." "Cassian," she gasped. "Again," he said, and she did. When she couldn't take more, when her body was limp and trembling, he kissed his way back up her body, slowly, reverently, worshipfully. Leora reached for him, her eyes glassy, her cheeks flushed. "Now you," she whispered. "Let me feel you again." He entered her with a thrust so deep she cried out. Her arms wrapped around his back. He drove into her harder this time, faster, with purpose. Not just lust, claiming. His mouth found her breast, his teeth grazing her nipple as she gasped and pulled him closer. "You were made for me," he growled into her skin. "Every part of you, yes," she whimpered. "Every part." He flipped her over, pulling her to her knees. She looked back at him, hair wild, mouth open. He slid in from behind, deep and slow. She cried out, his name again and again, one hand on her hip, the other tangled in her curls. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "I belong to you," she whispered. "I want to." He reached forward, wrapped his arm around her chest, and pulled her flush against him as he drove deeper. She came again, harder than before, screaming his name, her voice hoarse and desperate. He followed seconds later, spilling into her with a grunt, collapsing forward with a hand braced beside her head. Their bodies trembled, still joined, still connected, still claiming. After several minutes, they lay tangled together, breathless. Leora's lips were at his ear. "I've never let someone do that," she whispered. "Never like that." Cassian turned her chin gently to face him. "I'm not someone," he said. "I'm yours." She kissed him, slow and soft this time. And for the first time, it wasn't about passion. It was about belonging. The sheets were soaked with heat. Leora lay sprawled across the mattress, her back to the ceiling, thighs still trembling, lips parted from the sound she hadn't meant to make, but didn't regret. Cassian hovered above her, kissing the slope of her spine slowly, reverently. He hadn't pulled out yet. Neither of them had said a word, because what they'd just shared didn't need translating. Her breath was still catching when he reached her neck, pressing his lips just beneath her ear. She turned her face toward him, eyes half-lidded, body flushed with satisfaction and something deeper, need. He kissed her temple, then her jaw, and whispered, again. She smirked, voice hoarse. "You're insatiable. I haven't even begun." He shifted her onto her back gently, his weight pressing her into the mattress just enough to remind her that her body was still his to explore, and claim again. Her hands ran up his chest, fingertips gliding along the ridges of muscle. He kissed her, open-mouthed, slow, with tongue and heat. She arched into him, pulling him down harder, deeper. He slid inside her again, slow, deliberate. She cried out, arms wrapping around his back, nails digging into his skin. "Cassian," she moaned, already breathless. "You just—" "I know," he growled. But I want you again. I want you until your voice is gone and your legs can't hold you." She whimpered. He moved, thrusting deep, rolling his hips, grinding against the spot he already knew would undo her. Her hands were in his hair, tugging. Her eyes were wide, wild. He kissed her throat, her collarbone, then bit down lightly. "Say it again," she whispered. "Say you'll marry me." He slowed, pushed in deeper, held still, and looked her in the eyes. "I'm going to marry you," he said, "and not one person in this world will ever touch you again but me." Her hips jerked. "Say it louder." "I'll put a ring on your finger," he growled, thrusting harder, "and I'll bend you over our wedding table. I'll fuck you in your dress. I'll claim you as my wife in every room we step into." Leora gasped, hands gripping his arms, body shattering. She came, legs locked around his waist, moaning his name like a vow. He didn't stop. He flipped her over, pulled her to the edge of the bed, and entered her from behind. She sobbed his name, voice broken, raw. "You're mine," he whispered, kissing the back of her neck. "All yours," she cried. He reached under, cupped her breast with one hand, the other gripping her hip. Their rhythm was feral now, controlled chaos, devotion at its most physical. He exploded inside her, growling low against her back, burying himself to the hilt. They collapsed in a pile of limbs and heat, tangled and panting. Minutes passed. Then she rolled onto her side, fingers trailing lazy lines across his chest. "Still want that yes?" she asked. Cassian turned to her, eyes narrowed with amusement. "I earned it." "You did," she whispered. "More than once." "So?" She bit her lip, then leaned in. Kissed him. Soft, sure, full of promise. When she pulled back, she met his gaze. Yes, he didn't smile. He pulled her on top of him and kissed her like a man claiming a future. It arrived in a gold envelope. No return address, no handwritten note, just embossed letters and a heavy scent of overly sweet perfume that made Cassian's stomach tighten. He held it between two fingers like it was contaminated. Leora looked up from the breakfast table, sipping orange juice. "That from your mother?" He shook his head. "Worse." She raised an eyebrow. He slid the envelope across the table. She picked it up, examined the seal, then opened it with the tip of a butter knife. The moment she read the first line, her face changed. Cassian didn't need her to say it. Valencia. The invitation was for a gala, hosted by a luxury foundation they'd both once donated to, back when public image mattered more than private integrity. The event was formal, exclusive, paparazzi bait, and Valencia Black was on the host committee. Leora set the card down slowly. "She knows we're together. I'm sure she's been waiting for this." Leora folded her arms. "You want to ignore it?" "I should," Cassian replied. "But I won't." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because she thinks she owns the narrative," he said. "This time, I'll write it myself." Leora studied him for a long moment. "I'll need a dress." The week leading to the gala passed like a countdown clock wired to tension. Leora didn't ask him to reconsider. She didn't suggest another approach. She knew exactly what kind of woman Valencia was, and that nothing short of confrontation would neutralize her. Instead, she prepared, and so did Cassian. He met with his legal team, instructed his PR firm to stay on standby. He even hired a discreet cybersecurity analyst to monitor Valencia's digital activity for anything suspicious. She liked the spotlight too much to play fair. By Friday, his entire staff was aware that he'd be out of the office for personal business. None of them asked questions. Not anymore. On the night of the event, Cassian stood in the walk-in closet of their suite, adjusting his black bow tie with quiet precision. He'd chosen a deep charcoal tuxedo, sleek, sharp, deliberate. Leora stepped out of the bathroom a moment later, and he forgot how to breathe. She wore a satin ivory gown that hugged every curve with unapologetic elegance. Her curls were pinned into a soft crown, gold lining her collarbones, her eyes lined with the kind of intent that warned predators to think twice. Cassian stared. "You trying to kill someone tonight?" he asked. She smirked. "Only reputations." He walked toward her, took her hand, and kissed her knuckles. "I'm proud to walk in there with you." Leora leaned in and whispered, "Make sure they remember." The Langston Hotel gleamed under a sky that seemed too quiet. Valets lined the curb. Photographers flanked the steps. Lights flashed with every name called out. Cassian Reeve and Leora Vale, the announcer said clearly as they reached the top of the marble staircase. Heads turned, phones lifted, some jaws dropped. Cassian adjusted his cufflink as if the room wasn't collectively holding its breath. Leora didn't flinch. She offered a small smile and walked beside him like royalty that didn't need a throne. They moved through the crowd with measured grace. He greeted old contacts with curt nods. She exchanged eyes-only greetings with other women who recognized power when they saw it. Then, from across the room, she appeared. Valencia, crimson dress, hair curled and glossy, smile sharp. She stood near the stage, champagne in hand, eyes locked on them. She didn't wave, didn't blink, just smiled. Leora whispered, "She's going to try something." Cassian nodded once. "Let her." The music faded. A gentle clink of silverware quieted the room as a staff member approached the mic on stage and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before we begin tonight's fundraising presentations, a brief message from one of our esteemed sponsors." Cassian already knew. He turned toward the platform just in time to see Valencia step up, her hips swaying like she'd rehearsed every second. Her smile was wide, too wide. She adjusted the microphone, took a sip of champagne, then spoke with the syrupy charm of someone ready to commit emotional arson under the guise of elegance. "I just want to say how honored I am to be here tonight," she began. "This foundation has always stood for integrity, honesty, and truth." Cassian felt Leora's fingers tighten around his arm. "And speaking of truth," Valencia continued, "I thought it would be the perfect evening to clear up a bit of confusion that's been floating around, especially regarding someone very close to all of us." The room stirred. A few turned toward Cassian. Valencia's grin sharpened. "I recently stumbled across an old recording," she said. "A rather revealing one. I debated whether it was appropriate to share, but then I thought, what better place to be transparent than under chandeliers and cameras?" She waved to the AV tech near the side of the room. The lights dimmed. A screen dropped from the ceiling. Cassian's jaw tensed. Leora didn't move. Then, the video played. Low light. A man, shirtless, muscled, lying back on silk sheets, moaning. Arms stretched, head tilted. The resemblance was close. The camera angle did its job. It could have fooled anyone not paying enough attention. The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, a few poorly disguised chuckles. "I knew it. Is that really him? Could have sworn." Valencia turned back to the mic, shaking her head in mock sadness. "I just want him to be happy." But lies never lead to peace. The screen cut out. Silence followed. Until Leora stepped forward, heels clicking. Calm, controlled, unshaken. She reached the stage, walked past Valencia like she didn't exist, and gently took the microphone from her hand. She turned to face the audience, her voice clear and sharp. "Thank you for that. Netflix-grade drama," she said with a small smile. "But let's get back to the facts, shall we?" A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. Cassian stood tall, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on Leora. He didn't interfere. She had this. She was born for this. "The man in that tape?" Leora began. "Not Cassian. How can you be sure?" Someone asked from the crowd. "Easy," she replied, her tone smooth. "Cassian has a small scar on his inner thigh, a gift from a skiing accident in college. It's shaped like a hook and I trace it with my tongue when I straddle him. That man didn't have it." Silence. She continued, unbothered. "Also the sound. Wrong pitch. Cassian doesn't moan like that. He breathes harder through his nose, grits his teeth, and makes this low growl that vibrates through my entire body." Several guests blinked. A woman fanned herself. "And trust me," Leora added, "when he comes, the neighbors know." Someone gasped. Someone else choked on champagne. Valencia's smile vanished. Leora turned toward her, voice cool. "Try again next time. Maybe hire a body double who doesn't skip leg day." She walked off the stage to stunned silence, heels clicking with the authority of someone who'd just burned a lie to the ground without raising her voice. Cassian met her halfway. She didn't wait for words. She grabbed his collar and kissed him in front of everyone. Slow, lingering, certain. When she pulled back, she whispered, "You're mine." He whispered back, "Always." The ballroom didn't clap. It didn't need to. Respect doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence and fear, because every liar in that room now knew. This couple didn't play defense. They played to win. Leora didn't sit down. She walked straight back to the stage, heels slicing through silence, her presence demanding attention without a single raised voice. Cassian remained by the bar, watching her with pride, not panic. This wasn't damage control. This was coronation. She took the mic again. No music, no formal intro, just Leora Vale, alive, unbothered, and beautifully unfiltered. "You know," she said calmly, "I thought I was done, thought I said enough. But then I remembered, women like her count on silence. Count on people like me shrinking after a stunt like that." She glanced at Valencia, then back to the room. "So let me make it clear." Her hand went to her chest, fingers splayed like a vow. "I know what my man tastes like after 12 hours of meetings and 2 hours of sleep. I know how his voice breaks when he whispers my name between gritted teeth. I know what his back looks like when I drag my nails down it, and I know what he sounds like when he loses control inside me." Gasps rippled. Someone whispered, "She's serious." Leora continued, "I know the rhythm of his hips when he's trying to be gentle, and I know the exact second he decides to stop holding back. I know how his body trembles when I take him in deep, when I hold him there, when I whisper mine in his ear." She smiled then, but it wasn't sweet. It was savage. "And I know how to make him fall apart without ever taking my clothes off." Valencia stiffened. Leora turned her full attention to her. "I've watched women like you my entire life," she said. "Polished on the outside, hollow inside, using scandal as currency, weaponizing insecurity. Thinking pretty equals power." She took a breath, voice still cool. "But power isn't how loud you speak. It's how much truth you can carry in silence. And sweetheart, you wouldn't survive a day holding the kind of truth I carry in my thighs alone." A few in the audience laughed. Real laughter. Nervous, but reverent. "See," Leora said, tilting her head, "the difference between us is this. You fake things to feel adored. I live them, and that's why I'm loved." She held up the mic, balanced it in her palm. "This was cute," she said. "But next time you try to drag someone in public, make sure the person you're dragging doesn't come with their own storm." Then, without another word, she dropped the mic. Not gently, not carefully, but with intention. The sound echoed, and no one dared speak over it. Leora walked off the stage, her posture straight, her expression serene. She reached Cassian. He looked at her like a man who just watched a queen conquer a war without ever drawing a sword. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled. "I just made sure they never confuse her with me again." He kissed her, once firmly, in front of everyone. And together, they turned and walked out of the ballroom. No more whispers, just awe. They didn't make it to the car. Cassian barely got the door shut behind them before Leora shoved him back into the coat closet, her lips crashing into his with the urgency of someone who had just burned down a ballroom and needed to taste the smoke on her lover's tongue. He grunted against her mouth, hands already under her gown, fingers gripping her bare thighs. "Here," he growled. She bit his bottom lip. "Yes." The closet was dark, cramped, lined with fur, silk, wool. None of it mattered. He pressed her against the wall, lifting her with one smooth motion. She wrapped her legs around his waist, arms around his neck, her breath hot in his ear. "You watched me own that room," she whispered. "I've never been more turned on in my life." Cassian hiked her dress up around her hips, groaning at the feel of her heat against him. No hesitation, no games, just pure want. He unzipped his pants, not bothering to pull them down completely. She reached between them and guided him inside her, slow and deep. Both of them gasped. "You're soaked," he whispered, voice ragged. "You did this," she replied, standing there all smug while I burned her to ash. He began to move, thrusting deep, slow, deliberate. She clutched his shoulders, nails biting into skin. Every motion rocked her against the wall. Clothes rustled, hangers shook. She didn't care. Neither did he. Cassian leaned in, forehead pressed to hers. "You're everything." "I know," she breathed, hips matching his rhythm. "Now shut up and give me all of you." He did. The thrusts grew faster, harder, desperate. She moaned into his neck, bit his collarbone, rode the rhythm like a woman possessed. Cassian's grip tightened on her hips. "You feel unreal." "I'm very real," she panted. "And you're going to remember Every second of this. She clenched around him, tight, wet, demanding. He growled, slamming into her harder, the closet door rattling behind him. "Say yes again," he ordered. "To what?" "Marry me. Now." She moaned. "Say it. Marry you in a closet? Anywhere. Just say it." She looked him dead in the eye. "Yes." Cassian slammed into her one last time. They came together, hard, breathless, shaking. She clung to him as her body spasmed, whispering his name like a mantra. He buried his face in her neck, trying to steady his breathing. "I'm serious," he said. "I know." They stayed like that, bodies still joined, breath shared, heartbeat to heartbeat. Then Leora laughed softly. "Guess I can check public sex during a social scandal off my list." He pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. "Let's get married tomorrow." She arched a brow. "No dinner first?" "We'll eat after." She kissed him again, slower this time. "Try again. Tonight." She grinned. "Now you're speaking my language." They didn't speak on the drive home, but the silence wasn't cold. It simmered, alive with the heat still radiating from their skin. Leora's hand rested on Cassian's thigh the entire ride, not teasing, just claiming, and he didn't stop her. He welcomed it. The moment the elevator doors closed behind them in the penthouse, she turned to face him. "Strip?" He blinked. "You want a shower first?" "No," she said, stepping closer. "I want to see you, fully, no interruptions, no lies in the air." Cassian pulled his shirt over his head, slow and deliberate. Leora's eyes didn't leave his body. He dropped the rest of his clothes piece by piece until he stood bare in front of her, shoulders relaxed, chest rising with steady control. Then he reached for her gown. Her hands stopped him. "I said I wanted to see you." She stepped back and untied the delicate straps of her dress herself. Let it fall. No lingerie, no hesitation. Cassian's throat tightened. She stood before him, unapologetic, glowing, eyes locked onto his. "Touch me," she whispered. He did. His hands slid along her hips, then upward, cupping her breasts gently. His thumbs circled her nipples until she gasped. She stepped into him, her skin against his, every inch a match made of tension and memory. "I want you again," she breathed. Cassian lifted her in his arms. She didn't resist. He carried her to the bedroom, laid her down in the middle of the bed like she was fragile glass, then crawled over her like she was fire he needed to burn through. "I want to memorize you," he said. "You already have." "Not enough." He kissed her neck, then down her chest, taking her nipple in his mouth, sucking gently until she arched into him, her fingers tangled in his hair. "You're mine," she moaned. "Say it louder." "You're mine," she said again. "And I'm yours." He kissed down her stomach, her thighs, until she opened for him without a word. Cassian tasted her slowly, tongue precise, patient. She writhed beneath him, begging now. "Cassian, I need—" He looked up from between her legs. "What do you need?" "You. Inside." "Now." He moved over her again, lined himself up and pushed inside, deep, full, slow. She gasped, legs locking around him, her back arching off the bed. "You feel me like you were made for this," she whispered, eyes fluttering shut. He thrust deeper. "I was." They moved together, bodies slick with need and worship. Every roll of his hips dragged a moan from her throat. Every thrust made her voice higher, her hands tighter around him. "I'm going to fall apart," she said, voice breaking. "Do it," he growled. "Let me watch." She trembled, clenched, then screamed his name as her body came undone. He wasn't far behind. He stayed inside her as he came, burying his face in her neck, whispering broken promises into her skin. They stayed tangled long after it ended. Later, Leora lay with her head on his chest, tracing lazy circles over his heartbeat. "Tomorrow?" Cassian nodded. "Tomorrow. Our wedding?" "Private. Rooftop. Just you. Just me." She looked up at him. "I don't want anyone to witness this but the sky." He smiled. "The sky can keep a secret." She kissed him softly. "I want to love you out loud," she whispered. "You already do." 7 days. That's all they wanted. A week to slip into something sacred, away from cameras, gossip, and ghosts. No cathedral, no guest list, no lies. Just vows spoken under sky, truth wrapped in fabric and skin. Cassian paced the rooftop of his penthouse with a phone to his ear, finalizing florals with a soft-spoken designer from Brooklyn. He didn't care about centerpieces or color palettes. He only cared that the altar faced east, so the sun would rise behind Leora as she walked toward him. She wanted gold in the air. He wanted her smile in the light. That was the agreement. Downstairs, Leora hummed softly to herself as she pulled out fabric samples and scribbled sketches onto napkins. She wasn't interested in lace or embroidery. She wanted a dress that felt like freedom, no corset, no veil, no tradition to weigh her down. Bare shoulders, bare feet, and a bouquet made of things she'd picked herself. Cassian walked in and wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "You sure you want to do this with me?" She leaned her head back into his chest. "I already did." He smiled. "Then let's make it legal." She turned in his arms. "We should write our own vows." He nodded. "I want yours whispered into my mouth," she added. "Not read off a card, not heard by strangers. You want my promise or my pulse?" "Both." They spent the next 3 days preparing in quiet bursts of joy. Cassian cleared his schedule entirely. No calls, no meetings, no stock briefings. He cooked breakfast every morning badly, but she kissed him anyway. She painted small touches of gold onto a canvas that would hang behind them during the ceremony. When he asked what it was, she simply said, "The moment." He didn't question it. They made love in the afternoons, slow and unhurried, and fell asleep at night wrapped around each other like roots. It felt like the life they were always meant to build. But on the 6th day, something changed. It was subtle at first. Leora forgot to text him back when she went to grab candles from the market. She didn't answer when he called twice. He tried not to panic, but the silence echoed louder than usual. When she returned, she was quieter. Smiling, yes, but distant. Her kiss was softer, her hug tighter. She clung to him like someone memorizing shape and scent. That night, as they lay in bed, she curled into him and pressed her cheek to his chest. "You know," she said softly, "if I ever disappear, don't look for a reason." He stiffened slightly. "What are you talking about?" She looked up at him. "I'm saying, if anything ever pulls me from you, it wasn't by choice." He sat up slowly. "Leora, I just want you to remember that." Cassian cupped her face. "Where is this coming from?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Just promise you'll believe in us. Even if I can't speak, I will." "Say it. I believe in us," he said, jaw tight. "And I'll burn the world down if anyone tries to take you from me." She exhaled, then kissed him like she was sealing it. Cassian woke to silence. No humming in the kitchen, no warmth beside him, no scent of cinnamon and citrus drifting through the air. Just cold sheets and a clock blinking 6:17 a.m. At first he thought she'd gone downstairs, or maybe slipped out to pick up the bouquet pieces she insisted on hand-picking herself. But her phone sat on the nightstand. Wallet untouched. Shoes still by the door. His stomach tightened. He called out once, casually. No answer. Then again, louder. Nothing. He checked every room, the rooftop, the building lobby. Security hadn't seen her leave. She was just gone. By 7:03 a.m., he was in a panic. He called her phone anyway, just in case. It rang, then rang again, then voicemail. "Leora, call me, please." He tried again. Pick up, baby, please." He paced the kitchen, hands trembling. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the hollowness behind his ribs. The kind of instinct that doesn't need proof, because it already knows. She wouldn't just leave. Not now. Not like this. He was mid-dial when his phone buzzed with a new message alert. Unknown number, no subject, one video attachment. Cassian stared at the screen. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Then he pressed play. The video started with static. Then, a dim room, concrete walls, a single dangling light bulb swinging slightly, and Leora, tied to a chair, her mouth gagged, eyes swollen, hands bound. She looked into the camera, not crying, just furious. Cassian's throat closed. A voice played behind her, not hers. A voice he recognized immediately. "Valencia. Well, isn't she beautiful?" She purred off camera. Such fire, such elegance, such misused loyalty. Cassian's blood roared. "I told you, Cass. Valencia's voice continued. You should have stayed loyal to the woman who made you. Leora flinched as something slammed off camera. Valencia chuckled. But don't worry, I'm not cruel. You want her back? Fine. Come get her, alone. No police, no tricks. Another pause. Otherwise, I let them take turns. The video ended. Cassian stood frozen, phone still in his hand, screen now black. Then he moved. Fast, deliberate. Not one scream, not one tear. Just action. He called no one. He packed quickly. Knife, burner phone, gun from the safe he hadn't touched in years. Then he stared at himself in the mirror and whispered, You made the wrong threat. Cassian drove with the kind of stillness that unnerved even himself. No music, no GPS, just the burner phone, the knife strapped under his jacket, and an address sent in the second anonymous message. 12 Kingsley Textile Compound. 1 hour. No cops. Come alone. The abandoned factory on Kingsley hadn't functioned in over a decade, but it was large, empty, and remote, perfect for a trap, which was exactly what it was. Cassian knew. And he went anyway. He parked 2 blocks away and walked in through the east fence, silent, calculated. The air smelled like rust and damp concrete. Light flickered from broken flood lamps overhead. He kept his steps steady, his heartbeat calm, his grip on the knife sure. He didn't call out for her, didn't demand anything. That's what they'd expect. Instead, he watched. He waited. Then he saw her, through a crack in a rusted metal panel, tied to the same chair, eyes closed, breathing shallow, still alive. Cassian's grip tightened. That was all he needed to see. He circled around the back, bypassing the entry where a guard stood with a cheap handgun and a half-lit cigarette. Cassian moved fast, one swift strike to the back of the neck. No hesitation, the guard slumped without a sound. He took the gun, then crept through a side window. Inside, shadows danced along graffiti-stained walls. 3 more men. One near Leora, one by the exit, one pacing. Valencia's voice floated from the mezzanine above. Any sign of him yet? No. One man grunted. He's late. He won't be, she said. He's too proud, too in love. Cassian's mouth tightened. He counted 5 seconds between the pacing man's turns, then moved. Fast, quiet, knife to the throat, gun raised. 2 shots. Precise. The man by the exit dropped before he could aim. The one near Leora staggered, clutching his leg. She jolted awake, eyes widened. Cassian ran to her. She tried to speak, the gag muffling her voice. He yanked it off and cut her wrists free. You came, she gasped. Always. Behind them, Valencia screamed, Stop them! More footsteps echoed above, reinforcements. Cassian lifted Leora into his arms and ran for the exit. Gunfire rang out. Bullets ricocheted off steel. Leora ducked into his chest, clinging to him like oxygen. Outside, he reached the car, shoved her in, and peeled off before the second wave could reach the door. She was trembling. Dirty, but alive. He kept one hand on the wheel. The other reached for hers. Say something, he said, voice tight. I knew you'd come, she whispered. Back in the penthouse, she stood under the shower for 20 minutes while Cassian sat outside the bathroom door like a bodyguard at war. When she finally emerged in one of his shirts, hair dripping, eyes clearer, he stood. They stared at each other for a long beat. Then she said, They touched me. His jaw clenched. Who? No one got the chance. I bit the first one. Valencia stopped the rest, said it wasn't about hurting me physically, she just wanted to break you. Cassian moved to her in 2 strides. I'm not broken, he said. I'm done playing nice. Leora reached for his face. You saved me. He caught her wrist, kissed her palm. You're mine. And I don't share. 3 weeks later, Valencia Black stood in a courtroom built to hold thieves and tyrants, both of which she now resembled. Gone were the designer gowns. Gone were the manicured fingers and diamond-studded lies. She wore an orange jumpsuit, and a smirk that had grown thinner with each court session. Cassian sat beside Leora, one hand on her thigh, the other clenched into a calm fist. His suit was black. His voice was steady, but his eyes never left Valencia. Not once. Not when the prosecutor played the kidnapping footage. Not when the detective recited the threats. Not even when her lawyer attempted to argue she was mentally unwell. Leora, elegant in soft gray silk, said nothing for most of the proceedings, until the judge asked if the victim would like to speak. She rose. Leora's heels echoed softly as she approached the front of the court. Every camera lens tracked her. Every reporter's pen paused mid-scribble. She turned to Valencia. Then, to the jury. "My name is Leora Vale," she began, voice calm, voice unshaken. "And I am no man's weakness." The room went silent. "You thought hurting me would punish him," she said, eyes locked onto Valencia's. "But you miscalculated. You assumed I was breakable, disposable. A vessel for your rage against a man who stopped needing your validation." Valencia's lip curled, but she stayed silent. "I'm not here to beg for your remorse. You don't have any. I'm not here to describe the fear. I lived it, I survived it, and I wear it now like armor." She turned to the judge. "I want you to understand something. This wasn't about jealousy, or business, or even revenge. This was about possession. About a woman who couldn't accept that her name no longer echoed in the mind of the man she once controlled." She paused, took a breath. "And yet here I stand, free, loved, whole, and most importantly, untouched by your poison." She turned back to Valencia one last time. "And for the record, he was never yours. You were just the lesson that taught him how to find a real woman." Leora stepped down to a wave of muffled gasps. Cassian stood for her and wrapped an arm around her waist as she returned to her seat. The judge looked down at Valencia. "Miss Black, you have been charged with aggravated kidnapping, conspiracy to harm, and emotional coercion. You were given every chance to plead with humility and accept responsibility. You chose mockery instead. And now you'll face the weight of every choice." Valencia's voice broke through for the first time. "This isn't over." Cassian met her gaze. "It already is." The gavel fell. 25 years without parole. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Microphones flashed. Questions flew like daggers. "Cassian, any comment?" "Leora, do you feel justice was served? Will the wedding still go on?" Cassian raised his hand, and silence followed. He looked at Leora, then back to the cameras. "We weren't looking for justice," he said. "We came for closure." Then he pulled Leora closer. "And now, we're going home." The sun dipped low behind the skyline, casting streaks of gold across the rooftop garden. Cassian adjusted the cuff of his tailored cream suit, his fingers trembling, not with fear but awe. She was coming, and nothing, no storm, no scandal, no sentence, had stopped this day from arriving. Soft jazz filtered through hidden speakers. A handful of close friends and witnesses stood along the perimeter, silent, reverent, barely breathing. At the center, a path lined with white petals and scattered gold leaves. At the end of it, Cassian, waiting. Then, she stepped out. Leora wore no veil, no heels. Her dress flowed like water, hugging her hips, draping down in soft, sheer layers that glowed in the late light. Her afro was crowned with tiny blossoms. Her lips wore the faintest hint of shimmer. Her eyes never left him. Not once. She walked barefoot, her steps silent, sacred. Every camera faded. Every whisper vanished. Cassian's chest rose slowly, eyes locked to hers as if nothing else deserved his gaze. When she reached him, she took his hand. His voice caught. "You look like the reason the sky was invented." She smiled. "And you look like you finally believe you deserve joy." The officiant began to speak, but neither of them really heard it. Not the preamble, not the metaphors, not the expected declarations. They only waited for one moment. "Do you have vows?" Cassian turned to her. "No cards," he said. "Just truth." She nodded. "Speak it." He swallowed, then lifted her fingers to his lips. "You found me in the dark," he whispered. "You didn't shine a light. You walked in and sat beside me. You made a home from silence, a language from bruises. You let me bleed without turning away. And when I finally looked at you, really looked, you weren't saving me. You were showing me how to save myself." Leora's eyes shimmered. Cassian's voice deepened. "You are not the chapter after heartbreak. You are the pen I use to write a new story. And I vow, before this city, before our scars, before the sun that warms us now, to never stop choosing you." She inhaled sharply, then whispered, "Your turn to listen." Leora took his hand, both palms wrapped around his. "You were never cold," she began. "You were cautious, you were wounded, you were surviving, and yet you gave me space, room, breath. Love, not as a performance, but as a practice. Cassian's throat closed. I watched you strip away every mask, and never once did I flinch. Because I wasn't waiting for a prince. I was waiting for a man who would see me, not tame me. And I vow, Cassian Reeve, to walk beside you even when the path narrows, to kiss you even when your breath is shaky, to choose you even on the days you forget why you're worth choosing. Silence. Then, you may kiss. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her close, hand cupping her jaw, and kissed her like the vow was still unfolding. Guests clapped. Some cried. But Cassian didn't hear any of it. Because her lips were the altar, and she just made him holy. That night, in their suite overlooking the city, she slipped the dress from her shoulders and climbed into his lap. He didn't rush. He traced every inch of her skin with reverent hands. Mouth soft, eyes full, and when he slid inside her, slow, deliberate, claiming it wasn't lust, it was worship. She whispered his name like a promise, and he murmured hers like a prayer. The city glowed beneath them like scattered embers. But inside their suite, the only fire that mattered lived in their eyes. Cassian stood at the edge of the bed, his suit jacket already on the floor. Leora walked toward him slowly, fingers tugging at the soft straps of her silk nightgown until it fell, pooling around her ankles like moonlight. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He only looked at her, as if memorizing her curves wasn't enough. As if his hands had to relearn everything his eyes had already worshipped. You're mine now, she whispered, voice like velvet. Cassian's throat worked around the knot rising in it. I've been yours since the first sketch I ruined. She stepped into him, her palm sliding under his shirt, lifting it inch by inch, revealing ridges of muscle she'd kissed 100 times, but never with a ring on her finger. She kissed his collarbone, then his chest, then lower. Cassian hissed through his teeth. His hands found her hips, then her back, then the softness of her thighs. And when he lifted her into his arms and laid her on the bed, she didn't just open her legs. She opened everything. He started with her neck. Slow kisses, lingering licks, gentle bites. Her hands roamed across his back, nails dragging just enough to make him growl. Don't tease, she whispered. I'm claiming, he replied. He kissed down her chest, her stomach, between her thighs. And when his mouth finally found her center, she cried out, fingers gripping the sheets, hips arching, eyes shut. Cassian didn't rush. He licked, sucked, explored, patient but hungry. Please, she gasped. I want you, inside. He rose slowly, gaze locked on hers. You're not asking, he said, positioning himself. You're right, she whispered. I'm taking. She wrapped her legs around him and pulled him in. Their bodies met in perfect rhythm. No fumbling, no hesitation, just deep, slow, grinding thrusts that made the headboard tap gently against the wall. He kissed her with every stroke, as if his tongue needed to stay connected to her mouth while his body filled the rest. Leora moaned softly into his lips. I can't, she choked. Let go, he whispered. Let me feel you fall. She arched beneath him, hands gripping his shoulders, thighs trembling. And when she came, it was with a gasp and a shake that pulled him over the edge too. He followed her, deep, hard, infinite, collapsing on top of her, breath ragged, body shuddering. But even then, he didn't leave her. They lay tangled in silk sheets, skin against skin, heartbeats syncing like a symphony. Leora traced his lips with her finger. That was, she began. Just the first round, he murmured, already hardening again against her thigh. She laughed, breathy and glowing. I married a beast. No, he said. You married a man who never learned how to stop wanting you. He rolled her onto her stomach, kissing the dip in her back, and began again. When love meets longing and vows turn into moans, that's when forever begins. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever wanted to be taken like a promise and held like a prayer. Sunlight spilled gently across the sheets. Cassian stirred first, blinking slowly as gold filtered through the sheer curtains. The weight of the world had finally lifted, but the weight he loved most still lay curled against him. Leora, naked, beautiful and half asleep, her cheek resting on his chest, one arm draped over his stomach. She breathed deep, unconsciously nuzzling closer. Her curls were wild, her body warm, and her legs tangled in his. Cassian kissed her forehead. She groaned, barely audible. No talking. Just cuddling. He smiled. I haven't said anything. You're thinking too loud. He chuckled and pulled her closer. Minutes passed. Then she shifted, lifting her head, eyes still heavy with sleep. Are we officially husband and wife now? She murmured. He ran his hand down her spine. By law, by soul, and by the number of times I made you scream last night. She snorted. Modest. Accurate. She rolled on top of him, straddling his waist. Her fingers ran through his messy hair. Okay, she said, but I need 2 things. Cassian raised a brow. Only 2. Breakfast? He grinned. I'll have it sent up. She pressed a finger to his lips. And a kiss that tells me you'd marry me again. Right now. Even after seeing me cry, moan, snort, laugh, and steal the blanket. He didn't answer with words. Just pulled her down and kissed her like the city outside had vanished. They eventually made it to the terrace, wrapped in robes, sipping coffee and stealing glances. The sky was a painting, soft peach, pale blue, strokes of morning pink. Leora leaned into his shoulder. So, this is it, she whispered. Cassian looked at her. This is just the beginning. No more enemies? No more scandals? Just breakfast and future plans. No more reasons to run. He turned her chin toward him, gaze steady. I'm not running, I'm building. With you. She closed her eyes. Good. Because I already picked names for our kids. His coffee stopped mid-sip. You did? Yep. He smirked. Planning ahead, are we? I like the idea of little ones with your eyes and my sass. You say that like I'm not the one who's going to be outnumbered. You will be, she grinned. But you'll love every second of it. Cassian set his mug down, turned to face her fully, and cupped her cheek. We made it. Leora nodded. We survived everything they threw at us. He leaned in, and we turned every scar into strength. Their kiss was slow, not passionate, not desperate. Just full. Night came soft. The suite was lit by nothing but amber lamps and candlelight. Jazz floated through hidden speakers, low and sultry. Leora stood at the edge of the balcony, robe slipping from one shoulder, moonlight kissing her collarbone. Cassian watched her from the bed, shirtless, eyes heavy with want. You know, she said, not turning. I still remember the first time you looked at me like this. He rose, slow and deliberate. Like what? Like you were starving. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, lips grazing the shell of her ear. I still am. She turned in his arms and let the robe fall completely. Naked. Confident. Cassian's breath caught in his throat. He picked her up in one smooth motion, carrying her inside, laying her on the bed like something precious, and entirely his to explore. Leora smiled, eyes full of fire. Don't hold back tonight. I wasn't planning to. He kissed her ankle first, then the inside of her calf, then her thigh, slowly, deeply, with intention. Her breath hitched. Cass. Shh, he murmured. Let me take my time. He dragged his tongue higher, then paused, hovering just above the place she ached for him. She writhed, hips lifting. Please. He gave her one long, slow stroke with his tongue. She cried out. Then he feasted, unhurried, focused, methodical. Like her pleasure was a language only he spoke fluently. Her hands clutched the sheets. Her thighs trembled. Her moans came in gasps. When she shattered, it was loud, guttural, endless. But he wasn't done. He kissed his way up her body, stopping to worship every inch. Her stomach, the curve of her ribs, the underside of her breast. When he finally entered her, she arched into him like she'd been waiting her whole life to be filled that way. He moved slow, deep, measured, but every thrust carried weight, every kiss, devotion. You're mine, he whispered against her lips. Yours, she echoed. He rolled, letting her climb on top, her body silhouetted in candlelight. She rode him with purpose, hips grinding, eyes locked, every movement a promise. He grabbed her hips, helping her move faster, deeper. She leaned down, chest against his, mouth grazing his ear. Ruin me again. He flipped her onto her back, buried himself inside her, and did exactly that. They came together, loud, trembling, raw, spent and slick and tangled in the sheets. Cassian held her face, kissing her with slow reverence. I'll never get enough of you. Leora smiled, breathless. Then don't stop. I won't. Ever. Never. She laughed, eyes glassy. Good, because I still plan to ruin you every night for the rest of our lives. He grinned. I'm counting on it. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that real love isn't loud but loyal, not perfect but powerful, then let your heart speak. Comment below, I believe in love that heals, not hides. Like this video to help others feel what you just felt. Share it with someone who deserves to be loved like this. And don't just watch. Subscribe to Love and Twilights, where every story hits like fire.